The Hedgeless Horseman strategy, in my view, is one of the more flexible and frankly capable strategies that we play. It's a pretty simple system in theory, which really is designed to give you a ton of options and ways to sort of change the play as you go. But let's start out here by looking at the basic core system, which really is made up of 4 bets. I'll show them at first here at the same bet level, but of course you can change that. And the 4 bets are going to be these. We're going to start out with a bet on the don't pass, followed by 3 successive come bets, which may travel to a number, as we're showing here. And that's your basic setup. 1 don't pass and 3 come bets. Now there's lots of variation, lots of options, lots of things that can happen through the course of play. Let's go ahead and reset the rack and break that piece down for you, bet by bet, and get a better sense of the goals of the strategy, where the hot spots are and where the danger zones are. So here we go. We start out with a bet on the don't pass. Now, while the puck is off, which means the shooter hasn't yet established a point, the bet here is at risk. You're at risk to the 7 and the 11 on the come out roll. That's 8 ways to lose. There's 6 ways to roll a 7, 2 ways to roll an 11. There's 8 ways to lose in here. There are some ways to win. It will win on the 2 or the 3. There's 3 ways to win. It ties on the 12. The strategy is not built around winning on the 2 or the 3. Those are nice when they come. It's a bonus for you, but really it's built around the shooter establishing some point, in this case, the 5. You really want to have this bet be a bet on the 7 versus whatever point they've established. That's always going to be the power play. That's where you want to get to if you can survive that come out roll. You follow this bet up with 3 come bets. Each of the come bets has got a job to do. So while it's in the come, this bet will win on the 7 or the 11. Now let's take the 11 as an example. Let's say this thing comes in and it wins on the 11. I consider that bet to have been played and won, and I actually bring it back into my rack like this, and I play my next come bet. Okay, visually, you're gonna place 3 come bets. You're not gonna have 3 come bets working. So bet number 1 did its job, got paid, came back. Bet number 2 now starts to work. Let's rewind that a little bit. Go back to here. We're at bet number 1. And again, on the 11, we bring it back. On the 7, which we're looking for an early 7. This strategy is built around winning on the early 7s. On an early 7 here on roll number 1, after the point's been established, a 7 pays you on both bets. The come wins on a 7. Of course, your don't pass wins on a 7. And look what happens. Our rack ends up being where we started, plus a 2-unit profit. So the first roll 7 is ideal. We actually double up our potential here. Now let's go back and reset it. Let's say that first come bet though travels. It goes to the 9. Now, again, this come bet's job was to win in here or to win here when it gets set. But now it's in action as a working bet for us. Come bet number 2 comes out. Same situations apply. If the 11 comes, that's great. It did its job. It comes back and we're done. We move on to our 3rd bet. If the 7 rolls here, you'd of course lose your bet on the 9, your come bet to the 9, but both of these would pay. Again, win on the 7 here, win on your 7 here. The result in our rack is our initial bankroll has been set and we have a 1-unit profit. Again, on roll 1, you win 2 units. On roll 2, you win 1 unit. Let's reset it again. Let's say that both of those come bets come out and get set to actual numbers. Come bet number 3 comes out, and once again, if the 11 rolls, that's great. It comes back and that bet's done. If the 7 rolls in this position at this time, these bets would lose. Your come bet, of course, would win. Your don't pass would win, and you're effectively tied. So a 7 on roll 3 results in your rack being back where you started. You're in a tie position at that point. But what if all 3 come bets get set? Let's take a look at that scenario. Let's have your don't passes through. All 3 come bets have moved into numbers now. You've got a point of 5. You're playing the 7 against the 5. And now you have 3 come bets. And here, now you're playing like a right side player. You've transitioned from being a dark side player, which was a hardcore play on the 7 for 3 rolls. Now you're looking at, you want these bets to resolve themselves, okay? And let's assume that they do. For the sake of argument, let's assume that these bets all resolve. The shooter rolls a 9, so your come bet comes down and gets paid. Come bets are always returned to you every time, which is great. It comes back to your rack And now you've got part of your initial outlay back. Let's say the 8 comes back. Again, it comes down and gets paid. You bring it back to your rack. Now your rack is set up again from where you started. You still have a bet on the 7. You have a bet on the 6. If the 6 comes through, that's great. It comes down and it gets paid. Now you're showing profit. The shooter 7's out before that 5. Again, you're getting paid and you've doubled your money. In an ideal situation, all 3 bets come up and get paid. Shooter 7's out and you double up, that's great. Doesn't always happen. Matter of fact, I'll show you one of the worst possible scenarios here, which is, let's say you've got the don't pass through and you've got 3 come bets set. Here's the danger zone. The danger zone is this. The shooter makes their 5. Puck goes off and you lose your don't pass. On the come out, come bets are always active. So what's the worst possible case here? A come out 7. A lot of the table will be on the pass line. Front line winner, they all win. Front line winner, your bets go bye-bye. Okay, that's the danger zone. This strategy is not perfect. It works well when it works well, but you've got that one major danger zone. Now that doesn't happen all the time. It takes a perfect storm for that to happen, but it does happen, and I want you to be aware of the fact that that's definitely a thing you have to keep your eye on. Now, I want to talk about bet leveling because the core system is great at that base level, but let's take a look at an option here. And I'll give you a couple of ways to look at this. Let's change our bet sizes. Let's go to a 2-to-1 ratio and look at the difference. So we'll start out here with a $25 bet on the don't pass, and then 3 come bets at the $10 level. And let's see how that changes the math a little bit. Here we go again. We're coming out from the don't pass. Let's assume the shooter, we survive that, we get a point of 5. And I want to look at the differences in bet levels and in wins here. So let's say we come into the come with our $10 come bet. Now here on the 7, what would happen is you would win 25 on the don't, 10 in the come, $35 total win. Okay, that's, again, obvious on the first roll what would happen. But let's say that this bet travels to, let's say, the 9, and your second come bet comes out. Here, if the 7 were to come, what would happen is you'd lose the 9, you'd win in the come. Effectively, these bets cancel each other out, and you'd win the quarter down here in the don't, and you're up by 25 bucks at that point on roll number 2. Now, let's say that one travels. In the original Horseman, where they're all the same level, on bet number 3, as you know, now you would normally have tied. This is the point where you lose 2, you'd win 2, and you tie. However, when you lower your come bet size to half of what your don't pass size is, you lose 2, in this case, 20 bucks. You win 10, and you win the quarter. Now you're going to be up $15, in this case, on that third roll. So here on roll 3, you're actually ahead of the game, whereas before on roll 3, you would have tied. So by lowering your come bet size, you actually increase your power to win on the 7 for a longer period of time. What if at this level, all 3 bets get set, which is a possibility. And let's say that we're all set here. We have bets on the 6, the 8, and the 9 through the come. Now, when the 7 comes, you would have lost 75 bucks in the previous example. Here, you're going to lose 30 and win 25. Effectively, you're down 5 bucks. So the 7 has less authority over these come bets now when they're at the lower level. This becomes more of a hedge, almost a 1-for-1 hedge against these bets, which is actually an interesting place to be. So here the 7 comes, you're not going to get crushed like you did before. You're still at risk, of course, for the point being hit, losing the quarter, and the come out 7, but your total exposure now is 55 instead of 100. So that's an interesting place to be. I think when you level the bets down to this 2-to-1 level, it changes the math. It's even more dramatic when you go to a 4-to-1 level. Let's go ahead and take a look at what a 4-to-1 level change looks like. Okay, the 4-to-1 level looks like this. It's a $100 don't. That's a big one. It's a lot of work to get this thing passed. But again, let's say that we beat the come out and we get to the 5 again. Here again, on the early 7s, you're looking great. On a 7 on roll 1, it's a $125 win because they would both pay. If that come bet, however, gets set, let's say to the 9, come bet number 2 comes out. If we get a 7 here, they effectively cancel. You lose 1, you win 1. $100 profit on roll number 2. If that comeback gets set, and number 3 comes out, once again, you'd lose 2, but you'd win 125. You're now up 75 bucks on roll number 3. So even at roll 3, when the 7 comes, you're going to be in a good position to show profit. If all 3 come bets get set, however, look where we are now. If the 7 comes at this point, you win 100, you lose 75, you're still profiting a quarter on a 7 anytime after those 3 come bets get set. Whereas in the base strategy, when you're here, the 7 now becomes your enemy. You'd lose 75 and win a quarter, you'd be down 50. Here, at the 4-to-1 level, the 7 is still your friend, even when all 3 come bets are set. Again, the same danger zone applies. They could hit their point and take 100 bucks and then come out 7 and take your money. That can still happen for sure, but the position that you're in during the course of the roll is great. And as these bets pay off, of course, you're racking a quarter every single time. It's really a good place to be. I like the 4-to-1 ratio if you can afford it. And again, it doesn't need to be 100 and a quarter, right? The 4-to-1 ratio can be achieved if you can find one at a $5 table with a $20 don't and $5 come bets. If you can get to this position, it's the exact same spot. You have 4-to-1. If you can find a $5 table, that will still work for you. So I think changing the ratio of your bets is a great way to approach the Horseman. It gives you more flexibility in your rack, in your initial session bankroll, and you can play a lot more, I think, aggressively and differently based on these bets coming through and paying off. Now, where I think the Horseman really shines the most is in its overall flexibility. And I'm not talking about just the ratio, the bet size ratio. I'm talking about ways to reinvest your profits, your wins on the come, ways to attack that don't on subsequent wins. The Horseman is designed to not be played just this way. It's designed to be flexible enough to adapt to table conditions and also for you to adapt it to your own play style. So with that said, let's take a look at another way to play the Horseman.